Chapter 12. The Record Continued. August 28. As already stated, I can distinguish three distinct recognitions that produced lasting effects. As I look back, I can discern a progressive quality in the three which it seems should be noted. About 14 years ago, an old college friend called upon Sharifa and me, and the time was devoted to the discussion of theosophical subjects. My friend was an earnest student of the Theosophia. At one stage in the conversation, he outlined the various steps of a very old discriminative technique in which it is shown progressively that the self is not the body nor the various other principles of man, but that it can only be that final principle, which strictly is not one principle among others, that is, the Atma or pure subjectivity. I was familiar with the method, was already convinced of the soundness of the logic, and had previously employed it myself. But in this case, I certainly seemed to realize with certainty that, in fact, I am identical with the Atma. There was a sense of a new light which made clear much that had been obscure, but this was not a light seen in the form of a subtle sensuous perception. The effect upon the relative consciousness persisted. There was a definite enrichment, but I was not aware of the current of joy. The most significant consequence within the individual consciousness was a certain change in the base of thought. As an example, it may be noted that whereas prior to that date I had read the Bhagavad Gita because it was one of the important theosophic books, I did not like it, and it seemed to inculcate a veritable representation of life interest I then cared for. On the other hand, immediately after the recognition of my identity with Atma, I found myself spontaneously thinking, as my own thought, many of the ideas contained in the Gita. I realized them as obviously true, and instead of their carrying a repressive value, they were a source of light and expansion. I have never forgotten this recognition and have never felt disposed to question the fact I then saw so clearly. In the intellectual sense, that recognition was and is persistent, but other aspects of the personal nature were not included or were not sufficiently included. In the intervening years, I have often felt and acted contrary to that recognition. The second occasion occurred somewhat less than a year ago. I had been reading with deep interest a book by Paul Brunson, in which he told of his contact with a certain sage in southern India. I felt a sympathetic rapport with this sage, and repeatedly read his word with profound attachment. Once, while thus engaged, it suddenly dawned upon me that nirvana is not a field or a place where man enters and is enclosed, as in a space which envelops bodies, but I recognized that I am nirvana. In other words, the real self is not other than nirvana, never has been other, and never will be other. All that the individual man achieves is recognition of this eternal fact. With this transition in consciousness, joy was realized. Even at that time, I sensed it as a current, though in modified form as compared with the more recent recognition. I once spent a whole day immersed within it, and for a period within certain limits, I could invoke it. At the time, I was engaged in lecturing in classwork concerned with metaphysical subjects. A greater light came into this work. While previously I had employed a considerable degree of formal organization in lecturing and classwork, I then began to relax the formal aspects so that it stood more in background as something automatic in its action. I dared to leave a larger room for spontaneity on the platform, and found by repeated experimenting that I could trust that spontaneity, provided I could secure a certain attitude in the audience. Lacking that attitude, I could rebound to more formal preparation. Since then, I have continued to be able to operate between these two modes. I found that a conceptual coordination produced while one stood or sat before an audience released concomitantly a current like quality that had, among other features, the effect of holding the audience in a kind of stillness which I would describe as possessed of depth. The attention of the individual member of the audience was held, even though he did not understand the ideas developed, as was often found to be the case in subsequent conversation. A simple repetition of the same conceptual coordination did not have the same power in the same degree. I thus found a definite correlation between the current and the creativeness. From the relative standpoint, the current requires a progressive disintegration and reintegration of forms. Once a form becomes relatively fixed, the current subsides. And yet, in a very curious way, this disintegration and reintegration leaves a certain subtle master form unaltered. The result is essential consistency between all formal integrations produced in the current, provided the individual understands the use of the language. And even if he does not understand the art of language, that consistency still remains, though in a deeper sense, which is not so easily recognized.